friends. Welcome back to Save Black Girl Reads, where I am your host, Ariel, the best friend in your head that you never knew that you needed, but you're so glad that you have. Welcome back to week 3 of Becoming by our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, where we are getting into the things, honey. Also, say hello to Carmela. She's here. She just had a moment where she's not really feeling good, so she's recovering. So she feels better sitting in my lap than she does sitting on the couch or just being left alone. So again, no judgment here. We do the things anyway. So, in the process of going over chapters 7, 8, and 9, which are the chapters that we're going over today, because remember, we're doing 3 chapter increments for this book. There is a lot that is happening, sis. When I left you last, we were talking about how First Lady Obama was actually she's still in the process or in the part of the book of becoming me. And she was actually starting Princeton. Now we actually pick up in chapter 7 where she's talking about her matriculation through Princeton. She's actually gone to Harvard Law School. And now she is an associate or junior associate lawyer at Sidley and Austin, and she's mentoring. She's been prompted to mentor for a summer associate program. We learn that she's around the age of 25 or age 25. So in this process of doing the things, like she has been a full force, she has reflected, and now here we are. So while in Princeton, here are the things that she's actually highlighting. She's highlighting the fact that she misses home. She's highlighting the fact that she and Santita actually are still friends. And there are some differences in the ways that they chose colleges and matriculations. So on page 84, she actually highlights how home gradually began to feel more distant, almost like a place in my imagination. And so like she talks about how she actually misses home and she was at college. She kept up with some of her high school friends, Santita being one of them. And she even said that she envied Santita for the fact that she went to Howard University. And one of the things that she talks about is going to visit Santita at Howard. And just, going to explore the campus. And what she says is that she envies Santita for the fact that she was not isolated by her race. She didn't have to feel that everyday drain of being in a deep minority, which was really wild. The fact that she actually highlighted that. So again, shout out to all of the HBCUs that are out here giving grand education to Black people and other people of color who want to come in and feel included, but don't necessarily know how to do that at a PWI or a primarily white institution. But even in the process of her talking about her matriculation, we find out that she is majoring in sociology, and she is attempting to prove that she's a girl from the South Side of Chicago that belongs at Princeton. And she also does this thing within chapter 7 where she talks about the Great Migration of Blacks from the South into Chicago, and how a lot of the experiences that she and her friends had experienced of everybody going to the summer or going to the South for the summer, whether it was Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. She talks about how she and her friends actually reflected on how she and her friends actually realized that their families got to Chicago by way of the Great Migration from the South. And one thing that she highlights, even being at Princeton, is that her aunt Sis, which happens to be Dandy's sister, is actually there at Princeton. So she and Craig, while she's matriculated and Craig hasn't graduated yet, she and Craig would go and visit with Aunt Sis like once or twice a year or once or twice a semester. I can't remember which one she said, but I think it's once or twice within the semester. She would talk about the memories that were sparked from going to Aunt Sis's house, of them visiting South Carolina during the summers. And, page 86 really gives us a little bit more of an insight to into that particular viewpoint. So she says the South wasn't paradise. When she's reflecting on it, she says the South wasn't paradise, but it meant something to us. There was a push and pull to our history, a deep familiarity that sat atop a deeper, uglier legacy. Many of the people I knew in Chicago, the kids I'd gone to Bryn Mawr with, many of my friends at Whitney Young knew something similar, though it was not explicitly discussed. Kids simply went down south every summer, shipped out sometimes for the whole season to run around with their second cousins back in Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi. It seems likely that they had grandparents or other relatives who joined the Great Migration north, just as Dandy had from South Carolina and Southside's mother had from Alabama. Somewhere in the background was another more than decent likelihood that they, like me, were descended from slaves. The same truth for many of my friends at Princeton, but I was also coming to understand that there were other versions of being Black in America. And so I thought that it was very interesting that she would highlight how a lot of the space of Blackness that she learned, that there were different spaces of Blackness throughout her time in school, but also how it expanded in her space when she got to Princeton. And then, how she started putting two and two together, the recollections of the Great Migration from the South to the northern states for Black people, and how even though there were different spaces, because she talks about how Suzanne is like from Jamaica, she talks about how Cerny is Haitian, she talks about how other Blacks in her associations to Princeton were more so associated with either an island culture or some type of Nigerian culture or African culture or what have you. And the fact that they also had Black experiences in America, it just looked different, which also reminded me of something that Amanda Seales, I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but Amanda Seales has the Smart, Funny, and Black comedy, and she also does Small Doses podcast, but she talks about how every Black experience is a Black experience unless it is anti-Black. And I think that former First Lady actually highlights this in a very well way and in a very good method. And essentially she's talking about like how her Black experience actually lined up with others' Black experiences, but a lot of times those who she related to a lot in Chicago had a similar monolithic type of theme of descended from slaves, moved to Chicago in a Great Migration to get away from the South and the things that were still taking place, like Jim Crow and things of that nature. But she also reflects on a fun, impulsive memory of her boyfriend during that time, Kevin, who was a football player, and how they went running through a field, kind of inspiring their inner kids, and how she had an appreciation of that. It wasn't really too much of anything that really associated with anything else in the chapter, outside of the fact that she really thought that it was necessary to highlight how being a kid again can really assist in our imagination processes and things of that nature, and how a lot of times she actually kind of what's the word? She kind of resented. Well, I don't want to say resented. She judged Kevin because of his ability to kind of swerve, is what she used, the terminology that she used. But she was also like, she judged him for it because, Kevin went from being like this star football player to, and, going pre-med to like his dream was to be the mascot for the Cleveland Browns, and she judged him, even though she went and she helped him go find the outfit and stuff for the mascot. She talked about how she judged him for it. And so like it's really interesting how she in hindsight, she really reflects on the enjoyment of that moment and how she wished she would have listened a little bit to to some of the ways to swerve, because she actually talks about how in reflection, she knew that in reflection of going to law school, she knew that she was going specifically for people's approval and not necessarily for her own enjoyment. She realized that after college, after her undergrad years, she was tired. She was burnt out with school and she didn't really want to do it, but she pressed on anyway because of people's approval, people's oohs and ahs that we talked about in the preface. And how, she wants to be a doctor, like how those things, those types of things, of the impressiveness of people, how that reflected greatly on her and how she felt the need to continue to press on, even though she knew she was burnt out. And in these spaces, she realized that she remained on the path that she was on because of the watering of other people around her, having done to her vision. And she talks about it on page 92 of just essentially, let's go there to page 92. And she talks about it on page 92 where she says she's taken everything that everyone has ever given her: the love of her parents, the faith of her teachers, the music from Southside and Robbie, the meals of Aunt Sis, the vocabulary words drilled into her by Dandy, and she's converted it into this. So because everybody has taken a space and has had a sense of watering of her success, essentially, or what is deemed to be her successful path, she feels obligated to stay on this path, even though she doesn't necessarily, it's maybe not necessarily speaking to her in the way that it once did when she was a child, having these thoughts and these dreams of what growth and what desires could look like for her. So there's that. In this particular chapter, there are also transitions, as we tend to notice about some of the things that she does when she does these time jumps and she only gives you spaces. In these transitions, Craig has graduated and is playing professional basketball in Manchester, England. So kudos to Craig. We are so proud of him. And let us take this in. Let us have a moment of silence, because children. Honey, Aunt Robbie and Southside done went on the glory. They done went on the glory, children. They is gone. They are gone. But one thing about generational wealth and the passing of generational wealth, I think she highlighted very well when she talked about how Aunt Robbie bequeathed or left her house to her mom and dad, making her mom and dad first-time home buyers in their process. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad she talked about it. Because again, yes, people, let's, friend, lean in, friend, because you know how we do on this channel. We lean in. So as your best friend in your head, I feel like I have the responsibility to tell you the things after our forever first lady has brought it up. Generational wealth. So you see how in chapter 7, Aunt Robbie was like, lead a house to them. We got to get to this point where we start leaving our assets to our children and not leaving the earth without giving them nothing but the debt that we still owe. Okay, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, sis. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying nothing else about it. I'm not trying to tell you that you're a bad mother. I'm not trying to tell you that you're a bad person who's not holding on to your assets or doing what you need to do. All I am saying is your former first lady just said that her auntie left the house to her mama and daddy. So it stayed within the family. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying that we have to get to the point where we are paying attention to those types of things and we are getting our things in order. I know some of us on this channel, we don't like to talk about death. We don't want to address it. We don't like it. Just let's not talk about it. But if we know what is good for us, our counterparts in the wealth gap, that is the wealth gap, as someone who was in personalized insurance and talking to people about transitioning their wealth or transitioning their assets from one person to another, I can tell you that on the other side, our counterparts were having conversations with their children. They were leaving trusts, putting assets in trusts and transitioning the things on, leaving the things. They had the wheels in place. They were able to call us, let us know who was the executor of the estate should they pass away, and it was a smooth transition. A lot of times when it was us calling to say, hey, so-and-so had passed away, we did not have our stuff together. And all I am saying right now, friend, is that sometimes, although it is uncomfortable, we got to have those difficult conversations. Okay, that's my soapbox moment for chapter 7.